Hey everybody, Dr. Ed here. When there's a kink in a hose, you know that there's going to be effects from that physical injury. So instantaneously, if you have a kink in the hose, that's going to reduce the canal inside of the hose. So you're going to have reduced water flow. Left enough time, you know that's going to affect your garden or your plant. You're going to have plant not growing the way it should, withering, turning yellow, leaves falling off, so on and so forth. But the first issue is the hose. Like if you just focus on the plants and you focus on just the leaves and you could try and get them green by spray painting them, but is that really solving the problem, right? In the same respect, there is a cause and effect in the human body with the central nervous system. That's why we take the care here so seriously, and we offer care at such a high level because we're not talking about something small here. We're talking about your life expression through your central nervous system. So a lot of times when people come in, you might be amazed with the technology we have. This is Dr. Brianna here and reviewing some 3D imaging. And you say, well, why is it so important to review 3D imaging? Well, you got to think about what goes through the neck right up to the skull. You have the brain stem coming down. The lowest part of your brain comes down to the second vertebra right here. Okay. So that's the thickest part of your whole neurology. The whole brain's funneling through. And then it goes to the spinal cord. And now all the nerve roots are coming down the neck and down the rest of the body. They supply every cell, tissue, organ. Okay? Every cell, tissue, organ, all pain, all sensations, all adaptability, how your immune system functions, is all nerve system regulated. So these 3D images allow us to take a very specific and thorough look on if there's any of these vertebrae that surround that spinal cord and that brainstem twisted out of place, putting compression on all that delicate tissue, the nerve tissue, which would reduce nerve signals, not to mention blood flow, cerebrospinal fluid flow, all the rest. So how do we check, right? How do you check to know if your body's functioning the way it should and that these signals are getting through clearly or not? There's multiple ways. These are the ways that we use in our office because they have a very high level of research and data that have been used for decades. The first is posture. Okay? So up here in your upper neck, okay, there's an area of the brainstem called the reticular formation. And what they now know with science is that the reticular formation is it controls a lot of your unconscious posture. So when you're not thinking, how are you standing, right? So you might notice this with people you love, that they always have a head tilt like that, or one shoulder's up, or my goodness, don't do what I do and go to Wegmans and look at it all the time because it hurts my heart. There's so many people I'm like, if you only understood what that means, right? You're going to start assessing everybody in your family now. But the moment there's an injury to the upper neck or there's any pressure on that reticular formation, there's a cascade that occurs down the spinal column where muscles start firing, okay, improperly and not in their normal pattern. And what you can have as a result, and it occurs instantaneously from the injury, and it could be a lot more subtle than this, but this is just showing what happens, is you'll have a shoulder hike, a hip hike, okay? And what happens is a corresponding short leg, okay? Leg length inequality is what upper cervical chiropractors call this. Now, the reason why we care about this is because the central nervous system controls everything, including posture. This is our one way of looking to see what is happening within the body, okay? When pressure is reduced from the upper cervical spine, you'll actually have a restoration, and there could still be some postural distortions, but it'll restore dramatically, like it'll improve dramatically, almost instantaneously, the moment the pressure gets off of the brainstem and those nerves, okay? So it's really cool. So one thing we do is we look at posture. We do this different ways in the office, but one way we do is through leg checks. So every time somebody comes into the office, we're checking leg length inequality to find out, is there a leg that's pulling short, that's pulling the one leg shorter than the other. So it's not necessarily, which a lot of people believe when they first come in until we do the testing, it's not necessarily that one leg is short. That is possible if you had a fracture or a break on a growth plate when you were a child. But more than probably, it's just the contortion and the misfiring of the muscle groups pulling a leg short, okay? So one thing we'll do is certain reflex tests, and we're going to be checking if one leg is shorter than the other, okay? Another thing to find out if there's pressure on the central nervous system that controls everything in your body, or in our analogy, a kink in the hose, is checking with really specific testing. Okay, we call this the complete neurological diagnostic scan. It is a Titronic C5000 are the units we use, and this is a very specialized thermography device. And what it does is it checks inflammation patterns, and it checks surface blood flow in your neck. They have been using technology like this since the 1920s. It is so amazing. Okay, the brainstem, all right, the medulla oblongata, controls a lot of the blood vessel dilation and constriction. So it controls the blood flow in your neck. So by measuring this, you can get a good idea if there's pressure on that nervous system and it's not functioning the way it should. There's a couple things we look for. The one thing we look for is these are multiple scans, okay? So these were taken a few days ago, okay? But if you look at this, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we took 6 scans on this individual on their first visit. And a body that is functioning properly, what you'll see is an adaptability. You'll see a change. Our body, when it's functioning at its highest level, is constantly changing and adapting to the environment around it, to the gravitational stressors, to the atmospheric pressures, to the chemical, physical, emotional stressors of this world. Okay? When there is an injury to the upper cervical spine, what you will see is you'll see a pattern beginning to lock. So you'll see this would be the bottom of someone's neck and this would be the top. And if you start comparing these scans, look how similar they look. Okay? So you see it goes left and then goes up and then it has this little like C here. And the same thing is happening all the way through. Okay? If you look at that, look, that C is happening on all the top here. You can see it's going from right to left here, right to left here, right to left here, right to left here. This is a strong locked pattern. With all the data points we know in upper cervical research, this is a strong indication that there is what we call an atlas subluxation complex, that there's pressure on that brainstem, okay, from a malpositioned vertebra affecting the whole system. This is one way to check it. Now, when you reduce pressure, which you'll generally see, which I'll show you shortly, is you'll see all these lines, you'll never be able to get them to look the same. Every time you take the scan, every 5 to 10 seconds, they'll change because the body will be adapting at such a high level that this locked blood flow characteristic or pattern in your neck or inflammation pattern will actually restore itself. It'll eliminate. It's so cool. Okay? And the really cool thing about this technology is that if somebody comes in one day, doesn't get an adjustment, but they're out of adjustment, there's pressure on that brainstem. And we've had this happen. They go to Florida for 6 months, come back. They're like, okay, I'm ready to start. That scan will almost look identical to the one 6 months prior if there was no new injury or accident and that vertebra is still malpositioned in the same way as it was on that initial testing. So cool. Okay? So that brings us to this. Like if you know, for instance, your plant's leaves are getting yellow and the plant's withering and the soil's dry, you know there's something to the hose. So once we get those indicators, including like history, your health history, history of accidents, we do some other tests too where we're checking muscle tone in the neck and some other tests. But once you get that, you can get a very strong, really strong indicators that there is something going on in that cervical spine from an injury, where there is pressure on the brainstem and those nerves, because of what you're seeing with the posture, what you're seeing with the blood flow in that person's neck, and so on and so forth. So when you look at that, right, it's like this here, this is someone's neck from behind, this is the back of the skull, this is the atlas vertebra, and there's the neck, right? And what you should see is as you can understand, when that hose is straighter, you're going to have a better flow of everything. In the same respect, when the neck is straighter up and down, when you're just standing there and you don't have twisting of these vertebrae out of position, you're going to have better expression of life, nervous system, blood flow, all of that. But if you look at this, when you check the atlas to the neck on this person, look how much it's veering. Look how much pressure there would be on this side, where it's the acute angle, the smaller angle would be on this side than that side. Do you see that? And even with the head here. Okay? So we're able with this technology to actually look, like this view here is from the top down. This would be the back of the skull. So this is, moment here. This is looking at this level here. This next picture is looking at this from the top down, looking through the head. And if you look at this is the opening of the skull where the brainstem's going through. Here's the back of the skull here. And if you check this out, incredible. Like, look at the twisting of the second vertebra here. Look how much it's twisted to the right compared to the left of the canal. Look how you can see the second vertebra here, the whole rim of it. You can't even see it here. And then you can see how much the atlas is twisted also. Okay? So this person is just standing in neutral position looking straight ahead. And you have all this twisting and compression on that brainstem and that spinal cord throughout their body. Right? And that's why when these injuries occur, you can back it up. You can see how it's affecting the body. Two simple ways. You can even check blood pressure, heart rate variability. But two simple ways are posture, okay? And then also with the blood flow testing in the neck. Okay, the surface inflammation patterns of the neck with the testing we do every visit. Okay? So once you're able to you figure out what's happening, you can calculate very specifically how are these vertebrae twisted out of position. Just like you could look at a hose and be like, okay, it's kinked this way, I can kink it that way, right? But it's harder to do that on a person when they have all the skin and tissue in the way. With the 3D imaging, you're able to, with precision, see that, okay? And then you could very gently, we don't do any twisting, popping, or cracking in the office. We just do it a little differently here. But we very gently, with specific instruments, set very gently, under a couple pounds of force, can get right on the vertebra with measurements and start to gently adjust them so they could start unlocking from these unnatural positions that may have been held for decades, start opening up the canal. And then right after, those adjustments are given, and it's like fingerprints on people. Everybody's unique on how their injury is. Then we could check those testings again. We could check the posture again. We could check the blood flow patterning again, okay? And this is one of the doctors here, Dr. Abi, right? And if you look at this, it's like, this is what he is. This is what his pattern looks like when he's out of adjustment. And you could see that visit to visit, it looks dramatically different, each one of these, right? This was on 9/27, 10/31, right? Like different ones, different times we took this, right? So you can see that once the pressure starts getting off the brainstem and the spinal cord, that you can have an almost instantaneous change in the function that'll show in these tests. So you can leave with confidence being like, pressure is off my nervous system and my loved one's nervous system. Life is going to be a lot better. So cool. Okay? And why is that important? It's like this here is a picture of the brainstem, and there's the brain. Look at everything it controls, guys. Look at this. It's mind-blowing. Like the vagus nerve controls the heart, lungs, bronchi, the GI tract. It also controls the sensory, not only the motor nerves that control everything, but the sensory, like how it feels, right? For the heart, lungs, bronchi, trachea, larynx, pharynx, GI tract, external ear, right? Like, look at all this. It's mind-blowing, right? The trigeminal nerve, cranial nerve 5 comes out of that brainstem also, right? It controls sensory to the face, sinuses, and teeth. And it controls all your muscles for eating. It's mind-blowing. And like, this is why chiropractors were so passionate, especially upper cervical chiropractors. You look at this, it's like, look at what that brainstem and that spinal cord control. It's like, does it make sense that if you could get pressure off of that nervous system, more than probably going to live life a lot better with symptom-wise, right? And you're going to live a much higher quality of life. But what about the function of your life? What about the whole future? If your brain is supplying proper neurological information to all of these organs, back and forth, and you can get pressure off that brainstem and that spinal cord, how much different do you think your life and your loved ones' lives would be, as opposed to if there was massive pressure, or even a little bit of pressure over the course of decades, than if you were able to consistently get that pressure off and keep it off and get it more and more off, so those nerves could heal, so you could change your whole trajectory of your future. It's cool stuff, guys. I know I threw a lot at you in under 15 minutes, okay? Love and appreciate you guys. If this resonates with you, share the message. People need to know why it's so important to get their central nervous system assessed. And there's indicators to check before and after to make sure that you're living life healthier. And I'm telling you this, the research is out there. You ever bored, you let me know. People who get their nervous system clear, get pressure off of their brainstem and spinal cord and nerve roots, live life better. It's dramatically different life than if, let's say, you have a football accident, car accident, slip, fall, cheerleading, horseback riding accident, and you leave it, and that injury is going a different way your whole life. Love and appreciate you guys. Share this message. We can help find you an upper cervical chiropractor in your area if you have friends and family in a different spot. But if you're thinking about getting checked, we'd love to help you. We could run a consult and examination on you and then see, are you a candidate for care? Can we help you live better? We can help get some answers with solid data and science. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Share this message.